And our next speaker, all the way from Las Vegas, is Kasra Ghaharian, who is Director of Research at the UNLV International Gaming Institute. Kasra will tell us more about payment data and behavioral risk indicators. Kasra, please make your way to the stage for the next while. The stage is all yours. And welcome to Amsterdam.
Right, thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, thanks.
Thank you
very much. Hello, everyone. How's everyone going? As Willem introduced me, I'm Director of Research at UNLV's International Gaming Institute in Las Vegas. This is my first gaming in Holland. Really enjoyed the event so far and have certainly learned a lot. Didn't really know much about the Dutch market, and I'm looking forward to learning more, and hopefully I can contribute to the learning with this. I think it's going to be good context for everything that's been spoken about so far. Here is the International Gaming Institute at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Just miles from the Strip, actually. You can see the Strip in the background there. That's where I work. We do research on anything and everything to do with gambling, whether that's policy, regulation, operations analysis, or responsible gambling. And we have great office facilities here as well. Here's just some of our tables. This is my desk that I work at. Only joking, obviously. This is our casino lab, where we teach students about the foundations of certain different types of games and that kind of thing. So yeah, very cool place to work, and I'm happy to be here again. So today I'm going to be talking about data, behavioral data, and its implications for player protection. And I kind of started this work a few years ago, where we conducted what's called a scoping literature review. In academic talk, that's something complicated, but what it really is trying to understand the breadth of evidence on a certain topic. So we wanted to understand what does the evidence say in terms of data and responsible gambling. And we had many findings from this big literature review. One of the key ones, though, was that largely the evidence base is dependent on betting level data. So what is that? That's things like how much someone wagers, what did they wager on, the frequency of those wagers. That's what the heavy reliance is on at the moment. But there's lots and lots of data available to us, right? Here are just some of the maybe data sources that we have available as operators or other players in the space. Content amount, traffic, public data, phone calls, all of this data, and perhaps it's not being used to its full effectiveness for responsible gambling at the moment. And this is quite complex, right? I was in my office trying to prepare a presentation for this. I was trying to create a nice visualization, maybe doing all the interrelationships between these data sources and that. And what I came up with on my whiteboard was something like this. Yeah, a bowl of spaghetti, basically. It was very complicated to try and figure out all the interrelationships between these different data sources. But then I looked back at it and thought, well, you know, what if I look at it from the perspective of the customer? Maybe that'll make a bit more sense. And it kind of did. I'm not going to go through all of this now, but if you look through the customer journey from when they express interest in gambling all the way through to when they're actually engaging in the activity, there's all different operators and data sources that the customer interacts with along their journey. And maybe we can tap into these for something like player protection. And it's the payments bit, the making the deposit, that we became particularly interested in a few years ago. And why did we become interested in payments specifically? Well, if you look at all of this evidence, like I said, it did largely rely on gambling behavioral data, but a lot of these studies actually intertwined gambling data with payments data. And when they did that, they actually found the payments data was quite indicative. Does everyone know what the PGSI is in this room? If you don't know what it is, it's a Problem Gambling Severity Index. That's a questionnaire you give to someone, and you can basically indicate their level of severity in terms of gambling problems. So what gambling behavioral data is really good at is identifying whether someone is at any level of risk. But then the payments data actually looks like it's really useful for identifying higher risk players. So maybe if it can be used in combination with bet level data, maybe it can be used on its own as well. And that's what we were interested in. So we got access to about 100 million customer payment transaction records from a digital wallet provider. That's kind of like a PayPal. So what we saw was deposits and withdrawals to and from a customer's bank account, and then to and from the digital wallet to a wagering account. This is what the data looked like, which you can't really make much sense of because, there's a lot of it. There's no labels. There's nothing here saying this person's a problem gambler, this person isn't, this person self-excluded, this one didn't. So there was no labels for us to kind of analyze this data. So what we did, we used a technique called unsupervised machine learning to try and detect patterns that were similar or groups of people that were similar, kind of similar to customer segmentation, if you will, for marketing. What we found from this machine learning or cluster analysis was that the large majority of the customers in this data, based on their payment behavior, were what we called occasional activity players. They deposited quite less frequently for low amounts, and their net loss during this study period was relatively low. They maybe lost a couple of $100 during the study period. But then there was this kind of 11% or so of customers that fit into 3 clusters that could be described as atypical in terms of their payment behaviors. They had various different deposit and withdrawal behaviors. Maybe they withdrew at a very low amount. They had high activity and high intensity. Their depositing was highly volatile, that kind of thing. They also had much higher net losses during this period than those larger clusters there. So these are the clusters plotted by their number. As I said, the large majority fit into that green and black cluster there. Those were the occasional activity customers. And then there was a small number of customers in those 3 smaller clusters. But if we plot these same clusters in terms of revenue, you get this pie chart instead. So it was those 11% of customers who were actually accounting for almost 75% of the revenue for this digital wallet provider. I think that's something that H2 Capital mentioned earlier about a large proportion of revenue coming from a small number of players. So definitely echoing that information here. So, I guess what we found was that, payment data alone, so payment service providers and anyone else who has access to payment data could help support responsible gambling. And there's various different ways financial institutions could maybe help support player protection and responsible gambling. And one of the ways we're seeing it done in the UK is through open banking. And I know this was something mentioned in one of the breakout sessions, and it's something we're doing at UNLV actually at the moment, is investigating how open banking data can be used to support player protection. Why is open banking particularly useful? Well, if you think about player protection in terms of operator behavioral data, the best you can do is identify these markers of harm or erratic play. And what you're basically saying is, okay, because someone's hit these markers, that's an indicator that they're experiencing harm. But there's nothing actually objective there to tell you that that person is experiencing harm. Whereas with open banking data or any banking data, you could potentially identify actual markers of harm. Did someone use their overdraft? Did someone miss their mortgage payment? Are they able to pay their bills? That would be a sense that someone is maybe in financial vulnerability and is actually suffering harm. So as I said, we're currently looking into this at the moment. Some preliminary insights with some data we've got from the Department of Trust. We've looked at 500,000 UK consumers, around 6 months of data. And here's just some high-level summary findings we've got here. 1 in 3 gamblers make a deposit every month, so lots of them are frequent depositors. Depositing is not influenced by bank balance. A lot of people think, on payday, for example, depositing goes up. That doesn't seem to be the case. Gamblers use overdraft to make deposits. We actually found quite a significant number of gamblers in this data set use their overdraft to make a deposit to a gambling website. That was quite alarming. And then on average, consumers gamble at least 2 operators. So that kind of confirms the assumption that gamblers often gamble at different operators. So open banking, I just did some research in terms of what the outlook is in terms of the Netherlands for open banking, because it is quite a powerful tool that could help support some of these affordability measures that are maybe being proposed in this region. The challenges, though, appear to be standardization around the API technology. To really leverage this open banking technology, you need standardization of the API, and you need all the banks and different sectors to buy into that technology. Ideal is actually the most common digital payment method here. It's probably a challenge and an opportunity. It's a challenge in that everyone's used to Ideal, and maybe there's no need for open banking payments. But it is an opportunity because it shows that Dutch consumers are very open to making payments via digital transactions. But I think there's opportunity for something like open banking in the Dutch market because consumers seem to be very open to digital payments. They seem to have quite a propensity to want to make digital payments, and they're quite open to using new technologies. The Digital Intelligence Index, which is kind of an index that's done by Tufts University in the US, they kind of rank digital literacy or enthusiasm across different jurisdictions around the world. And here's just some data from one of their most recent indexes that they performed in Holland. So it ranks first in attitudes to digital trust. Only 17% of Dutch consumers have big concerns with sharing financial data. 72% of Dutch consumers are comfortable paying directly from a bank account. And 90% of Dutch consumers are open to trying new financial management tools. So I think something like open banking could potentially become something the Dutch market adopts, especially with the affordability checks that are being proposed. So just in summary, risk identification, as I said, has largely relied on betting activity. Maybe we should widen the scope to the other data sources that might be available. Behavioral markers certainly can maybe be identified from payments data alone, so that could maybe provide evidence for widening our scope in the data we used. Particularly bank data could provide robust actual markers of financial harm. And then the digital payments landscape in the Netherlands is most certainly vast and advanced and provides a good framework for something like open banking to become a popular use case for player protection. Thanks very much.